if the police decide to issue me with a fixed penalty notice, I would, of course, do the right thing and step down. This matters. It matters because the British public deserve politicians who think the rules apply to them.
Starmer once vowed that if police found he had broken lockdown rules, he would resign. Now that promise is coming back to haunt him. It has been widely suggested that Starmer may have breached those same rules, and this time, the public doesn't seem willing to let it slide. The pressure is even more intense because Starmer was among the loudest critics of Boris Johnson during the Partygate scandal that ultimately forced Johnson from office.
Allegra Strachan laughed at breaking the rules. She resigned. The Prime Minister then claimed he was furious at her behaviour and accepted her resignation. Professor Neil Ferguson broke the rules. He also resigned. The Prime Minister said that was the right thing to do. The former Health Secretary broke the rules. He too resigned. The Prime Minister tried to claim he sacked him. Why does the Prime Minister think everybody else's actions have consequences except...
Now, the same scandal is haunting Keir Starmer. But how did he allegedly breach lockdown rules, especially when he was so confident he had done nothing wrong? And will he actually resign, keeping his own standard that lawmakers who break the law should step down? In this video, let's unpack the full story. Keir Starmer is now facing what could become the biggest crisis of his political career, and ironically, one largely of his own making. His entire public persona has been built on presenting himself as the responsible, law-abiding alternative to leaders like Boris Johnson, whose own Partygate scandal ultimately led to his downfall.
The same rules as everyone else. When my mother-in-law passed away suddenly just before the lockdown, my wife and I were unable to provide her father with the support we wanted to afterwards, because we followed the rules. Barely a day has passed where we haven't agonised over that decision. But we did it because we followed the rules. We all found the rules frustrating at times, and I'm no exception to that. I had to isolate.
The irony here is striking. When Starmer made those remarks, many now question whether he fully believed them himself. At the time, he was at the forefront of demanding the resignation of Boris Johnson, arguing firmly that politicians who break the law must step down. Now, however, similar accusations are being directed at him. Starmer's entire argument rested on the claim that he was different, a leader of integrity, someone who followed the rules and held others accountable. If he were to be found guilty of breaching lockdown laws and still refused to resign, his credibility would suffer serious damage.
I'm absolutely clear that no laws were broken. They were followed at all times. I simply had something to eat while working late in the evening, as any politician would do days before an election. But if the police decide to issue me with a fixed penalty notice, I would, of course, do the right thing and step down. This matters. It matters because the British public deserve politicians who think the rules apply to them. They deserve politicians who hold themselves to the highest standards. And they deserve politicians who put the country first, rather than...
Now it's time for Starmer to keep his word. The allegations against him are not just political attacks, they are said to be rooted in concrete evidence. On Christmas Eve 22 when London was under strict Tier 4 lockdown restrictions, Starmer was reportedly caught meeting his voice coach, Leonie Mellinger, in person at Labour HQ in central London. Under the rules at the time, people were required to work from home unless it was absolutely necessary. Mellinger, who traveled more than 50 miles from Brighton to London, would not have qualified as an essential worker under any reasonable definition.
The other issue is that Starmer's voice/comm/acting coach was considered so essential that she qualified as a key worker during COVID. Now, look, I don't know about you, but I seem to remember key workers being those who were absolutely pivotal to the continuation of society, not least so people could keep working. Doctors, nurses, train drivers, teachers, the police. I know Boris Johnson infamously called Sir Keir Starmer the human bollard, but surely the Labour leader's ambition to find a bit of character could have waited until after an apparently deadly pandemic had passed.
This is where Keir Starmer's hypocrisy becomes impossible to ignore. The same leader who demanded harsher, faster lockdowns and accused the government of ignoring public health guidance appears to have bent the rules for his own benefit. Even more striking is that Leonie Mellinger had previously worked with him remotely. If her coaching could be done virtually before, why was it suddenly necessary for her to attend in person? The logic simply doesn't add up. Starmer has tried to spin the story, claiming he was preparing a press response to Boris Johnson's Brexit deal and needed his team nearby. But that explanation rings hollow. Many professionals shifted to virtual work during the pandemic, and a vocal coach hardly qualifies as essential personnel legally allowed to bypass lockdown rules. The fact that even Labour's own justifications remain contradictory only raises further questions about whether Starmer knowingly broke the rules. For many observers, this inconsistency is becoming harder to ignore.
This is a story that is gathering a lot of momentum and shows no signs of going away. Should Keir Starmer be investigated by the police for allegedly breaking lockdown rules? If there is a police investigation, that he should also promise to resign if he's found to have broken the rules, shouldn't he? Keir Starmer has an unbelievably thin skin, and today you can tell that the revelations that a voice coach and an actress visited him at Labour HQ on Christmas Eve when London was in Tier 4 lockdown.
Before we go any further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share it and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive coverage of the groundbreaking changes happening in OF script. Now, let's continue. The most damaging part of this scandal is that Keir Starmer effectively set the trap for himself. When Boris Johnson faced backlash over Partygate, Starmer made it his personal mission to bring him down, insisting that breaking the law, even for minor infractions, was grounds for resignation. But now, when he was asked what he would do while under scrutiny himself, he declined to give a clear answer.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key word?
Perhaps he forgot that he once declared a lawmaker cannot be a lawbreaker, and that if rules are broken, the lawmaker should step down. He went even further, promising to resign if he were ever fined for breaching lockdown rules. It was a bold stance when he was still leader of the opposition, a role where he had far less to lose. But now that he is prime minister, the stakes are far higher. He has already faced repeated accusations of hypocrisy, most notably during the Beergate incident, when Keir Starmer was pictured drinking beer and eating takeaway with colleagues in Durham while COVID rules were still in force. He narrowly avoided consequences that time. However, this time his reputation may not survive.
I tell you what this looks like, Prime Minister. It looks like there was one rule for you and your lovey mates during COVID and one rule for everyone else. It looks like you wanted to lock us all up, ban us from seeing our grandparents, stop us from visiting dying relatives in hospital, but you could get some has-been actress at your beck and call whenever you wanted. Keir Starmer has developed a reputation with the public for not necessarily always sticking to his word, whether that's with pensioners, waspy women, farmers, securing the border, cutting your energy bills, reducing taxes, you name it. So do you really believe him now? Do we really believe all the rules were followed? Do we believe him when he says this?
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key word?
Of course not, he says, of course not. Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's get the police involved, Prime Minister. After all, we've had 2-tier Keir, now we've got Tier 4 Keir, haven't we? And maybe the Prime Minister should ask for his money back from that voice coach after all.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
The Conservatives wasted no time seizing on the scandal. Conservative MP Richard Holden formally called for an independent investigation, stating that if Keir Starmer does not resign, he will be guilty of the very same double standards he once accused Boris Johnson of. There is no easy escape from this situation. If Starmer continues to claim innocence, he risks reinforcing the perception that he is just another politician who believes the rules do not apply to him. However, even if Starmer refuses to step down voluntarily, there are several ways he could still be pushed out of office. If public pressure becomes overwhelming, his position could quickly become indefensible. When Johnson faced public outrage over Partygate, his approval ratings plunged. If the same trajectory unfolds for Starmer, as some signs already suggest, he could lose control of the narrative and be forced to step aside to protect the Labour Party from deeper damage. And if major media outlets continue probing the inconsistencies in his story, the scandal could grow into something far harder for him to ignore.
This apparent rule breach from Sir Keir Starmer came during a much more serious time of COVID than his Beergate drama in Durham. Do you remember that? Where he and Labour colleagues, including Angela Rayner, gathered for lagers and curries. Remember this? There he was, the leader of the opposition at the time, swigging from a bottle, raising concerns that he wasn't working at all. He was actually eventually given the all clear by Durham police for that meeting. He got away with it. But all of this matters because Keir Starmer was the first person during COVID to demand the government went harder and faster with draconian rule.
Another major risk for Keir Starmer is an internal Labour coup. Labour MPs have long harbored leadership ambitions, and this scandal could provide the perfect opening for a challenger such as Angela Rayner or Wes Streeting to make a move. If Labour begins to view Starmer as a liability ahead of future elections, pressure from within the party itself could force him out. Rival factions inside Labour have attempted to organize leadership challenges before, and if they sense weakness now, they are likely to seize the opportunity.
Nonetheless, I think there is the possibility of severe turbulence ahead. And, there is a group of very, very powerful, probably they've got the intellectual edge at the moment, the Blairites. And I'm thinking of people like Wes Streeting and lots of his allies, Liz Kendall being one of his allies and stuff, inside the reformers inside government. And there is the soft left, who would probably gather, as it were, under the Angela Rayner banner these days, I think. But Louise Hay would certainly be part of that instinct. And I just really, really hope they don't go to war with each other.
Even though the Metropolitan Police have declined to investigate due to the 3-year deadline for initiating COVID-related proceedings, that does not mean Keir Starmer is entirely in the clear. If political pressure continues to build, there could still be efforts to push for a review of the case. If Starmer were ever officially found guilty of a violation, he would have little choice but to resign, as he previously promised. For now, Starmer appears to be playing down the allegations, hoping the public will eventually move on. But the reality is that this scandal is no longer just about whether rules were broken. It has become a question of credibility, leadership, and the growing perception of hypocrisy that now surrounds him.
Patrick Maguire's book and Gabriel Pogren's book, which has been serialised in one of the papers today, and it's got a lot of stuff in it, and Leonie Mellinger's obviously getting a fair bit of publicity out of it. Now look, Keir Starmer said, no, without any equivocation, if the police found him guilty and he was received an official caution or any form of judgment, he would resign. Yeah. I'd imagine he'd do the same thing now, because you cannot say he's anything other than a man who...
However, analysts suggest he is likely to refuse to resign, arguing that Starmer prioritizes his own interests over honor or reputation when under pressure.
Yeah.
If I am fined by the police for Beergate, he was called Cormac here, Beer here at the time.
Whatever, He
got away with it. He did say, as you said, I'll resign. So you think now, even though he's Prime Minister, he would still resign?
As far as I'm concerned, that from what I know of the man, if this is a real breach of the law and if he is found guilty of it, then he would certainly consider his position.
I highly doubt that. Absolutely.
I don't doubt it for a minute.
Keir Starmer, after only 6 months into being Prime Minister, just going to let it all go,
equally
step down because of this.
But you honestly... let's find out.
He didn't resign when we had the whole Lord Ali saga. They thought they'd gotten away.
Starmer's refusal to resign, despite breaking the same COVID-19 rules he once used against Boris Johnson, cements his hypocrisy. Ignoring his own demands for accountability confirms what critics have long suspected: he is no different from the politicians he attacked, arguably worse, since he set standards he now refuses to meet. Had Johnson tried to stay in office after being fined, Starmer would have led a political firestorm demanding his resignation. So why does Starmer think he's exempt? Simple. He assumed he'd never be caught. Confident he'd avoided scrutiny, he now scrambles to justify his actions, yet in the past, he didn't miss a chance to mock Johnson.
Finally, what he twigged of sort of wading through the bottles and the food, he finally twigged he might be at a party, having sort of said hello to everybody with a glass of wine. This must be a party. And then he says at the dispatch box, well, I wish I'd sort of got everybody in, because I'd obviously stumbled on this party in my own back garden. Absolute horror. And after half an hour, I'd worked out it was a party, so I should have stopped it happening.
I should have sent everyone back inside.
How does that fit with his first defence, which was there were no parties?
Guidance was followed completely during number 10.
Or his second defence, that in December 2021, he was furious about it just found out about them.
I'm furious about that.
If he's now saying back in 2020, he found out after 25 minutes it was a party, and he should have got everybody in.
If Starmer keeps clinging to power, he won't just look like a rule breaker, he'll look like a fraud. Years of posturing as a man of principle would crumble the moment he betrays his own rhetoric for convenience. Will he resign now that it's clear he broke lockdown rules, or try to pressure the authorities to look the other way to save his career? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Starmer should resign and show some honor knowing he violated the law. If you want more videos like this, like, share, and subscribe for updates on OFIS script and how events are unfolding.